Welcome to Full Circle. I'm Suzanne McAllister. Thanks for joining us today. Well, if you're a regular viewer, and we hope that you are, you know that we end every program with music. And today we have a very special performer. His name is Mark Bowden, and he will perform A Kiss Toward. Be sure and stay with us. It's a great performance. But first, I am so excited to introduce and welcome Ginny Byrd to the program. She's a business owner, she's a philanthropist, she's a successful person, and she's here to talk about her life and her faith and favor. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Suzanne, for inviting me here. I'm just honored to be here.
Thank you. That means a lot to have you here. So, tell us your story. I want to start when you and your husband, Jonathan, who has passed away, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And I know you're going to talk a little bit about caregiving and how we can nurture ourselves through this process.
Yes.
But the two of you came together at church, and you have built an empire.
An empire. I never thought about it that way, but I suppose it might be considered an empire. Well, Jonathan and I met when we were 20, and we met at church. And he never got involved with the teen class. He was too smart, he felt. So he always sat in the pastor's class. So he had gone to the church for quite a while before I ever met him. But I was dating someone else and broke up with him. And so the associate pastor and his wife kind of like brought us together. He would say, "Do you know Ginny Byrd, or Ginny Driver? You should date her." And she would say to me, "Do you know Jonathan Byrd? You need to meet Jonathan Byrd because I think you would really like him." So he called me and invited me out to a Pacer game. So our very first date was to a Pacer game in the old Coliseum.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
So, and 3 weeks later, people are shocked when I tell them this, but 3 weeks later, he proposed and I accepted. And 5 months later, we were married.
Wow, I did not realize. Well, it
was a
truly
whirlwind.
was meant to be. So during his lifetime, tell me about the various businesses that the two of you have been involved in.
Well, he grew up in the restaurant business. His family started a business in Greenwood in 1952. It was a frozen custard stand called the Custard Kitchen. And that evolved into a drive-in restaurant called the Kitchen Drive-In. And so Jonathan grew up always working in his family's business. So there was a man named Harlan Sanders who used to call on my father-in-law.
Sounds like Kentucky Fried Chicken to me.
He would say, "You need to sell my fried chicken in your drive-in." And my father-in-law resisted for a long time, but finally he gave in and they started selling Kentucky Fried Chicken in their kitchen drive-in. And so Jonathan would come home after school and go to work and start frying chicken. So that evolved, and then they built a Kentucky Fried Chicken in Greenwood. So, and all this was, of course, before I knew my husband. So in 1973, Jonathan and I were married, and then about a year later, I started working in the Kentucky Fried Chicken. But unfortunately, in 1975, his parents divorced, and then we bought them out, and then we started building Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants of our own. But Jonathan always had a lifelong dream of building a cafeteria. Now, when he was a child, they would go to Florida around Christmas time. They would shut down the drive-in, and they would go to Florida in the winter. And they would stop at the little cafeterias along the way. And he was always fascinated about the fact that you could just walk down this line, and they would you could look at the food, point to it, say, "I want that," and you could have it right away.
So you never know how those experiences will shape our adult life. And you still have those cafeterias now, but you also have hotels and a number of things that you've been involved in.
Yes.
But as a restaurateur, I know that you are also very interested in health.
Oh, yes.
Tell me a little bit about what we, especially as women, need to be doing to keep ourselves and our families healthy.
Well, first of all, we need to hydrate. We need to drink plenty of water. We need to take vitamins. I'm a huge believer in supplementation as well as eating as healthy as you possibly can. Our motto at the restaurant for years has been eat your veggies. That's been my thing that I've always said to people.
Good.
Eat your veggies. We did a whole campaign around that. We did it for the children. but the adults picked up on it. So I still hear adults will come to me and say, Ginny, have you eaten your veggies today? And I would say, yes, I eat my veggies every day. But I think we need to concentrate as baby boomers. We need to concentrate on our health. We need to concentrate on being fit as much as possible. The easiest thing you can do is walk.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And what's really sad is in 2014 that women die of heart disease more than anything else in this country. And that's very sad. And I'm working in my own business to make my recipes as healthy as I possibly can. And I've been really diligent in doing that the last couple of years because I've seen the effects of heart disease. I've seen the effects of stroke. And stroke is no respecter of persons. It doesn't care how busy your schedule is. It doesn't care what you've got on the books. It doesn't care how many things you're doing. A stroke does not respect you at all. And I've seen the effects of that firsthand.
You know that firsthand because your husband, after a procedure, ultimately had a stroke, survived for 5 years. What was that process like for you, Ginny?
Well, he was bedridden most of the time. For about the first year after, about 6 months after, he finally became more active. And I bought him an electric chair. I bought a wheelchair van. I would take him to the restaurant in the evenings, and sometimes we would eat. He had therapy in the restaurant. And the one thing that I have to say this, when Jonathan was waking up and becoming more aware, we watched Channel 40 every day because those shows he could relate to. And they were such a blessing, and I still have to watch The Lone Ranger and Leave It to Beaver whenever it's. But those programs on Channel 40, I want everyone to know, with LaCie, what a blessing those programs were to us, because they, when you're helping someone in stroke remember things, the first thing they do is have you sing Happy Birthday, because that's something in your brain that's there from childhood.
We can all relate to that.
Yes. And so when they're doing stroke therapy, that's something in speech therapy they start doing. So to go back and to look at programs that you remember from your childhood, that was part of Jonathan's therapy.
Well, I will make sure that we pass that along. You never know how the LaCie programs will be affecting and touching people's lives. Well, don't go away. We are back with more with Ginny and her story after this. Stay with us. Welcome back to Full Circle. We're continuing our conversation with Ginny Byrd. She's a successful business owner, philanthropist, lady of faith, and she is sharing her story about the issues that she had when her husband had a stroke and ultimately died 5 years later. And we're sorry for your loss. It has to have been a major setback in your life. But let's hone in on those 5 years when you were a caregiver. I'm sure there are people that are watching now that can relate to your story.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
What advice do you have for them? What words of wisdom?
Well, the Lord got me through all that, those 5 years. The book of Joshua got me through. Be strong, be courageous, fear not, don't be fearful, keep going forward, even though your leader has died or is incapacitated. Because Jonathan was our leader. Jonathan handled everything. Jonathan ran the businesses. Jonathan ran everything. He was a micromanager. There wasn't anything that happened that he didn't know about or take care of. Even though I always worked in the business, I was out front working, but Jonathan solved all the major problems. So when he had his stroke, it all fell to me and to the children. And it was tough. So I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would go and sit in the living room after I was able to bring him home, which we lived in a small condo when he had the stroke. He had the stroke at home.
Wow.
In the bathtub.
Wow.
And what was really, and the Lord orchestrated all this. I know this all happened for a reason, because nothing happens in our life that God's not aware of. He's not asleep at the wheel. Things just don't happen that he doesn't know about. He knows everything that's going on in our lives.
Right.
And he allows things to happen for our good and for his blessing.
So what was that blessing for you, Ginny?
Well, it made me maybe perhaps grow up a little more and realize I can do this. It's going to be tough, but God's helping me, and I will get through this. So I would wake up in the middle of the night, and of course, Joshua was my go-to book.
Of course. You mentioned a go-to book. I know you also, The Treasury of Lester Sumrall, you also are a fan of this book.
I have that in my office.
I want to just share this that I found, because I know that you can relate to this. Seldom is any situation as bad as worry makes it seem. And also, if you worry about the future, you are not trusting God.
Absolutely.
Do you find some truth in that as it related?
Without faith is fear.
Yes.
So even though I was fearful, but God assured me, sitting in the cafeteria at the hospital one morning, when he was in a coma. He was in a coma for over 3 weeks. Reading Mark, the story of Jesus getting in the boat with the disciples and going to the other side. That was the next verse. And I thought, okay, God is going to take me through this into the other side. I don't know how, and I don't know when, but I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to get to the other side of all of this, whatever all this is. I'm going to get to the other side because the Lord is going to take me there.
His hand is on you. And your husband died 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Now. How has that journey been for you, going to the other side as a widower?
Well, the first thing I did, the night that Jonathan passed away, the evening he passed away, it was just a really surreal moment. Our son David was traveling to Singapore to do a Bible conference. And he had a layover in Beijing, and he called the house, and because I was glad to know that he was
safe and sound,
that he halfway through his journey, and I said to Jonathan, David's in Beijing, he's on his way to Singapore, and he said, okay. And right after that, I hung up that conversation with David. I said to Jonathan, are you hungry? You want me to fix supper? And he said, yes. So I started making dinner for him. And at that time, he was sleeping most of the day because he was getting weaker. And
right.
I knew what was coming eventually. But he went to sleep, and I thought he was sleeping, but he passed away during that time that I was in the kitchen preparing dinner for him. And I said, well, I guess there was a better supper waiting for him someplace else.
Oh. So your humor has helped you through some of these difficult times as well. Because burnout can really set in.
Oh, yes. I mean, I had a nurse who came to the house, God love her, Edith. She was my lifesaver. She came to the house 2 days a week so that I could leave, go to the grocery store, go to the restaurant, go to the office. And have a little bit of life outside, because I took care of Jonathan 24/7 and home. And I was glad to do that because I had to build a house, because we lived in a very small condo when he had the stroke. So we had finally agreed to build a house in Greenwood. And so when he had the stroke, the young man who built our house and his dad was at the door, because we were having a meeting with them to discuss building our house.
So you never know how those plans will go. We need to take a short break, but we'll find out more about the story after this. Ginny Byrd is our guest on today's program. It's been a delight to learn more about her. I've been to her cafeterias, delicious, and I'm so glad to meet you finally because I know that your energy and your feelings about food and how important it is for us to be proactive and not let the government take care of our food. We need to take care of ourselves.
That's true.
Meeting
Very
the lady
true.
behind all that has really been a real treat. So let's just kind of wrap up what we've talked about in terms of being a caregiver for your husband for 5 years and now a widow for 5 years. What advice do you have for someone who is going through a similar journey?
Well, the first thing I did after I realized that my job as caregiver was over, I went back to work. I went back to work full time, and I've never stopped. Finding your passion and get involved. Work with volunteer. If your loved one or something was involved in go and volunteer in that organization. But get out of the house and be active. That's what I tell all my friends who have gone through what I've gone through. Find your passion, work with ministries, give to ministries. I mean, I love to give because I think that if I'm giving, I believe if I'm giving in that ministry and that ministry is blessing, that I'm in on that blessing as well. That's why I like to give to LaCie. That's why I give to some other organizations, other ministries that we were involved in for many, many years. Hope Givers International, based in India. My husband spoke at a graduation in 2001. We went to India and he spoke at their graduation. 10 years later, I got to go back to another graduation where my son David spoke at that graduation. So that was a beautiful full circle for me and a blessing. But I love to work and I love people and I love to serve food because there's something very spiritual. Look at all the food in the Bible.
Absolutely.
I love to serve food, and I love what I do. I don't want to stop.
Well, it shows, and I just appreciate Ginny Byrd for being our guest today. She has shown that even though you may have lost a loved one, a spouse, that if you stay connected, stay involved, and give back, your life doesn't have to end. So Ginny Byrd, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we are back with our music performance after this. Stay with us.
Stay tuned. Musical Showcase is coming up next. And now, here's our Musical Showcase.
Welcome back. It is my pleasure to introduce Mark and Bowden to you. Mark has been singing and performing and writing songs for over 20 years now, and you may be familiar with a very popular song that he has performed nationally called You Are Holy. It is a pleasure to have you here on the show.
It's great to be here.
So tell me a little bit, why was music so important to you? Obviously, you've been doing it for a long time.
Oh, I grew up, I'm from a family of 5 boys, and we traveled and did revivals and sang harmony and old Southern gospel, and I think as a kid I swore I would never do this, and then this is what I've been doing for the last 25 years. So.
But you know you're changing lives through the storytelling and through the music. That must make you feel really good. Yeah,
worship is what really changed my life and brought me to Jesus. So I started writing worship songs right away when I started traveling and doing. I wanted to be a singer-songwriter, James Taylor, but God kind of had a different plan, and I ended up leading worship and writing worship songs, and that's kind of what I've been doing.
Well, you're going to be performing Kiss Towards. Tell me a little bit about that, because it's also the name of your book and your CD.
Yeah, I teach a lot about worship when I do camps and conferences and retreats, and one of the definitions from the word worship is a Greek word that the word is actually proskuneo, and it means to give a kiss towards. And I always felt like that's one of the things that happens on a Sunday morning when the whole bride gets together and we have this intimate moment with God where we're singing. And so I teach a lot about that, and then I decided to kind of pen this song based on that teaching. So.
All right, well, I look forward to hearing A Kiss Towards. I'm so glad you could be with us. I'm Suzanne McAllister, and I'll see you again next time, Full Circle. Here's Mark.
How can I say I love you in a way that you feel love? What would the song sound like to make you sing along? Take every breath, all that I say, may it all point to your name. The way that I live, all that I do, may it all be a kiss toward you. Yeah, when the night is over and my days are through, when I'm finally standing before you, may it all be a kiss toward you. Oh yeah. And how can I live my life to show the world your love? And what would my life look like? 'Cause it's easier said than done. Take every breath, all that I say, may it all point to your name. The way that I live, all that I do, may it all be a kiss toward you. Yeah, when the night is over and my days are through, when I'm finally standing before you, may it all be a kiss toward you. Yeah, when the night is over and your love comes shining through, when I'm finally standing before you, may it all be a kiss toward you. Oh, oh yeah. And how can I say I love you in a way that you feel love?